AITA for letting my sons lose their $2 million trust fund after they chose their stepfather over me? I am a 48-year-old man who spent 15 years raising my two sons alone, doing everything I could to offer them a future. Then one day, they stood before a court and chose another man over me. What they did not understand was that their choice would trigger a series of events no one could have predicted. Let us just say it did not end the way they imagined. You do not raise children alone for 15 years just to have them spit in your face, but that is exactly what happened. Caleb was 17, Mason was 16. I was the one waking up at 5 a.m., making their lunch, enduring boring school concerts, and working 2 jobs so they would not lack anything. Their mother left early and came back later with her upgrade, a clown named Derek who walked around like he invented fatherhood. And where did we land after all those years? Family court. I will never forget those smug looks. My boys sat across from me with those stupid smiles teenagers wear when they think they have figured everything out. Beside them, my ex-wife, all proud, looking as if she had just won the lottery. Derek had his arm resting on the back of the bench like he owned the place. The judge had not even entered yet when I saw her lean toward Caleb and Mason, whispering like a coach drawing up a last-minute strategy. Her lips moved fast, and she nodded her head. Mason chuckled into his hand as if the whole affair was a joke. That was the first stab. He was not even nervous. It looked like they had rehearsed how to betray me. The judge finally entered and asked the usual questions. Caleb, Mason, are you sure you want this adoption? Do you understand what this implies? Caleb straightened up as if he were giving a speech. Yes, Your Honor. Derek is the real father in our lives. He showed us what it means to be a father. I swear my ears rang. Real father. I wanted to stand up and scream. Who stayed up all night when you had a fever? Who took overtime shifts so you never missed a Christmas? But I did not do it. I stayed seated, jaw clenched, because I was not going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me crack. Then it was Mason's turn, and that kid, he pulled something out of his pocket, and I recognized it immediately. A photo, one of the old ones that used to be in the living room, the 3 of us at the park when he was about 8. I thought it had been missing for months. He held it up, tore it in half with a sharp motion, and let it fall onto my lap without saying a word. Then he crossed the courtroom to stand near Derek as if it were nothing. I cannot explain the kind of silence that falls in your chest when your own son does that. It is not loud. It is not even painful at first. It is just empty. The judge banged the gavel. Adoption approved. There it was. 15 years of my life erased in less than 2 minutes. My boys ran toward Derek like he was a hero. He hugged them, looking at me over their shoulders with a victorious smile. My ex-wife snuggled up to him, eyes shining with triumph. I left without saying a word. Walking out of that courthouse felt like leaving a funeral, except the coffin contained my own efforts. Back at home, the silence was deafening. I sat at the table and opened my computer. For years, I had kept a separate account. Every double shift, every weekend of work, I saved what I could. The number glowed, $447,000. It was the fund. The proof that I was not stingy, just preparing for the future. That money was supposed to help them with their studies, their weddings, their lives. Now, it was just their mocking me. I told myself I should be angry, but no, not yet. I was hollow, as if someone had scooped me out from the inside. But in the middle of all that emptiness, I felt something. Not hope, not sadness. Something sharper. Because if they thought I was going to disappear and collapse, they had no idea who they had just challenged. That night, I stayed on the couch for hours. My phone vibrated 2 or 3 times. Spam messages, but nothing from Caleb or Mason. Not a sorry dad. Obviously, I should have expected it. My head spun with numbers, as always when I do not want to think about my emotions. That is sort of how I survived as a single father. And suddenly, I remembered something. My father, their grandfather. He was not rich, but he was smart with money. Before passing away, he had created a trust fund for Caleb and Mason. The goal was simple, to ensure they would have something to start their college life. I had never touched it, even when things were hard. That fund was sacred, untouchable. So, in the abyss of that night, I wondered what becomes of that fund now that they are no longer legally my children. I did not know the answer, but one person would. Grant. More than a lawyer, he was a family friend. He had known me as a child. He was my father's friend before being mine. If there was anyone who could be honest with me, it was him. I called him the next day. My voice cracked while telling him what happened at court. He did not seem surprised. Son, I am sorry. I warned you that your ex was maneuvering. I do not care about her, I replied. I need to know about the fund. Dad's fund. What happens now? A silence. Too long. My stomach nodded. Grant never hid anything from me. He finally sighed. Your father, he was smarter than you thought. He included a reversion clause. He wrote that if Caleb and Mason ever ceased to be your legal heirs, the fund would not stay in their hands. It would revert to you as the residual beneficiary. I sat there without breathing. Repeat that. It is yours now. $2 million without conditions. He did not trust your ex to manage it. He figured if the boys turned their backs on you, they would not deserve it. I leaned back in my chair staring at the wall. $2 million plus the $447,000 I had already set aside. $2 million for $147,000 within reach. My father, even after he was gone, had seen all this coming. For the first time since the court, I smiled. Not a big smile, not joy, a sharp smile. They thought they had won. They thought their broke stepfather with his leased cars and credit card debts was their winning ticket. They had no idea they had just signed away their entire future. I thanked Grant and promised to stop by to sign the papers later in the week. Hanging up, I took the safe out of the closet. Inside, a binder with all my passwords, all my bank access codes, every contingency plan I had ever created. I opened my accounts and looked at the numbers piling up. It did not seem real, but the anger had not gone away. I needed to know how deep the betrayal went. So, I dug further into the closet and found Mason's old MacBook. He had used it at the start of high school before begging for a newer model. I had kept it, thinking I would reset it one day. I opened it, logged in, and his iCloud account was still synced. The messages started scrolling. Photos, group chats, years of history. And what I saw showed me just how far my ex-wife had gone to turn them against me. He does not care about us. He only thinks about money. That is why he works all the time. Other dads take their kids on trips. He makes us stay home because he is cheap. It is embarrassing when he drops us off in his old car. Everyone stares. Caleb, I do not want him coming to my games. He will just make me look uncool. Mason, Derek really knows how to take care of us. Mom says that is what being a real father is. Years of sacrifice, twisted and distorted to look like failures. They saw it as humiliation. And their mother, she was the architect. She had repeated these ideas over and over, painting me as the villain, Derek as the savior. I closed the computer and stood there, hands gripping the edge of the desk. For years, I believed I was raising them alone. In reality, I was fighting a ghost war without even knowing it. But now, I had something I never had before. Leverage. They thought they had stripped me of my title as a father. What they really did was hand a fortune to me. And if Derek was already showing off with cars and trips he could not afford, then this trust fund was the treasure he was targeting. He wanted the money, my ex wanted the money, and my sons sold themselves cheap, believing the grass was greener elsewhere. Well, guess what? The grass on their side is plastic, and I was about to rip it up by the roots. I did not have to wait long to see the first cracks. A week after the adoption hearing, Caleb sent me a photo of him and Mason in a trendy restaurant holding up steaks bigger than their heads. The caption read, "The real father finally takes us out properly." I saved the photo. Evidence. The funny part is that 2 nights later, I found myself at the same place with a colleague. Long story, a client dinner moved at the last minute. Halfway through, I spotted Derek at a table near the bar, puffing out his chest like he owned the place. Caleb and Mason were still with him. The boys looked proud, like royalty on parade. But when the bill arrived, I saw the waiter run Derek's card. First time, declined. Second time, declined. The waiter leaned in and whispered something. Derek forced a laugh and pulled out another card. Declined too. His face went from smug to pale in a few seconds. Caleb looked at Mason, saying something to him, but Derek covered the awkwardness with a forced smile. It is the machine, happens all the time. Finally, he went to the ATM across the street, leaving the boys there embarrassed. 10 minutes later, he came back with cash, leaving a huge tip as if to redeem himself. The whole scene was pathetic. I said nothing. I just filed that away in my mental folder titled Derek equals Conman. A few days later, I received a call from Grant's accountant friend. I had asked him to discreetly dig into Derek's finances. He did not even try to soften it. Your ex's husband is finished. He owes about $400,000 to private lenders. His business is bankrupt, and he is juggling loans to keep the lights on. Honestly, I do not know how he is not already in collections. Everything made sense. The leased cars, the overpriced dinners, the promises of AITAs for their 18th birthdays. Acting, nothing but acting. This guy was not rich. He was sinking, and knowing Derek, he was going to look for lifelines soon. I did not want to reveal myself too early, so I waited. And sure enough, 2 days later, I received a WhatsApp video from Caleb. He was posing in front of a red Audi, a stupid grin on his lips. Look what Dad is getting us for our birthdays. One each. Finally, someone who does not humiliate us. They looked so sure of themselves I almost laughed. The car was not even his. The dealer plate was still on it. I replied with a simple thumbs-up emoji. Nothing more. Let them stew in their arrogance. What they did not know was that the accountant's report had already told me the truth. Derek could not even pay his own rent. So buying 2 sports cars? Delusional. So, the real question was, where did he plan to find the money? That is when I thought of Ronald, my ex's father. I had not spoken to him in a year, since she started distancing him from Caleb and Mason, but I still had his number. I called. Ronald, it is Nathan. Silence. Then a tired sigh. I knew you would end up calling. How are my grandsons? They are not my sons anymore, I said bitterly. I told him everything. The adoption, the court, the boys running to Derek. When I finished, he stayed silent for a long time. Then his voice came back trembling with anger. That scum. You know why she took them away from me? Because she knew I would see right through him. You know how much he owes me? $60,000. I gripped the phone. 60,000. You are kidding. That is not all. His voice got lower. 5 years ago, he faked an incident at work. Insurance fraud. My daughter helped falsify medical documents. I still have the copies. She was the one who asked me to keep them at my house. I kept them. I stood stunned. You have proof. I have a box full, he said. Receipts, papers, everything. I kept quiet because she is my daughter. But now, they took my grandsons away for this good-for-nothing. No more silence. That box was dynamite. After the call, I sat down and looked at the chessboard. Derek was in debt up to his neck. My ex was attached to him, convincing Caleb and Mason he was a hero, painting me as the worthless miser. The boys were bragging about cars that did not even exist. Meanwhile, I had proof he was broke, proof he owed money to his own in-laws, and soon, proof he was a fraudster. They thought they had shut me out of their lives and their future. In truth, they had moved into a crumbling house and locked the door behind them. And I was outside with the matches. That was the moment I decided this would not be a silent grudge. I had spent 15 years swallowing my pride in silence, working, saving, proving with actions that no one wanted to see. If they thought the adoption was my end, they were heavily mistaken. I was not ending. I was preparing a show. Not a show in a rented hall where they could parade like kings. No, it had to happen in the same house they called a prison. The same living room where Caleb rolled his eyes at my Excel spreadsheets. The same couch Mason found not modern enough. If they wanted to mock my life, then my life was going to be the stage for their downfall. So, I called my ex. I want to organize a dinner, I told her coldly. A farewell party for the adoption. A real goodbye. You, the boys, Derek, a few relatives. An evening to make it official. She hesitated, surely waiting for me to crack. Wow, she finally said. You finally accept reality? It was about time. Just do something nice, Nathan. Not one of your cheap barbecues. Something respectable. I almost laughed. Do not worry. It will be an evening they will never forget. That night, I made 2 lists. The first, for her eyes, a few cousins, neighbors, safe friends. The second, the real one, Derek's former partner whom he scammed, a few creditors circling around, and of course, Ronald. I knew she would edit the official list, thinking she kept control while I quietly sent the secret invitations. Then came the setup. I took the old projector out of the closet and pointed it at the living room wall. Perfect. Sharp enough so no one could say they did not see clearly. I started creating slides like a briefing. Page after page, my overtime hours, my tuition payments, my savings balance, and the masterpiece, a scanned copy of the college trust clause. In bold, highlighted. Impossible to ignore. This was no longer a dinner. It was an execution. A few days later, I received a package at my door with no return address. Inside were framed photos I had not seen in months. Me with Caleb and Mason at the beach, Christmas mornings, Little League games. On top, a note written in Caleb's messy handwriting. Go ahead, keep the trash. The future belongs to us, not you. I stood in my kitchen looking at it. I had thought the torn photo in court was low, but this was deliberate. They had literally packaged up my fatherhood and mailed it back to me as unwanted junk. I carried the pile to the fireplace. I lit a match and threw every photo into the flames. Seeing them curl into ash did not hurt as much as I imagined. It was final, like closing a door and locking it from my side. That night, instead of pitying myself on the couch, I went to the gym. That is where I saw her. Brown hair tied back, sharp focus, pushing herself hard. She caught me watching her once, gave a small nod, then went back to her workout. I did not even know her name yet. Later, I would learn her name was Vanessa. But for the first time in years, I realized life could exist outside the rubble of fatherhood. As the dinner approached, it became obvious my ex was nervous. She texted me after I sent the guest list. We need to select. Some of these names are not suitable for a family event. Translation: she crossed out everyone who knew the truth about Derek. Perfect. I did not argue. I just replied, okay. Let her think she was pulling the strings while I built the trap beneath her feet. By the end of the week, the house was ready. The living room was cleared, chairs were borrowed from neighbors, and the projector was tested again and again. My suit hung in the closet. The slides were saved in multiple places. I was not nervous. I did not doubt. For the first time since court, I felt like the master of the game. They thought they had stripped me of my title as father. In truth, they had simply set the stage for their own unmasking. The matches were ready. All that remained was to light them. But apparently, Derek and my ex had the same idea. The only difference was they tried to strike first. It started with a phone call. My phone vibrated, and when I saw the name, I almost grinned. Derek. The first time he had called me directly. When his name flashed on my screen, I put the call on speaker and set my old phone on the desk to record it. I knew whatever came out of his mouth would be worth keeping. Hey Nathan, he said, trying to sound too casual. We should talk, man to man. About what? I asked, already knowing. Listen, now that I am the legal father of Caleb and Mason, I need access to their education accounts. My lawyer says as guardian, I have the right to manage the college trust your father set up. So, let us not complicate things. Give me the info, and everything will be fine. I leaned back in my chair, smirking, even though he could not see it. That is interesting because I do not know the details. My father handled everything with Grant, the family lawyer. Silence. Then, sharply, fine. Give me his number. I gave it to him. I hung up and continued my day. 2 hours later, Grant called me, laughing so hard I could barely understand him. Nathan, your ex's husband just called me, demanding access to the trust. When I explained the clause that caused the boys to lose their rights after the adoption, he went hysterical. He was screaming that it was impossible. That he was the legal father now. He sounded like he was about to smash everything. Good, I said. Let him vent. The next morning, my ex called me. No hello, no preamble. You thief, she screamed into the receiver. You stole our son's money. That fund was for them. They are not my sons anymore, I replied coldly. Remember? You insured that in court. You know what I mean, she retorted. That money was for their education. You are disgusting. I cut her off. No. What is disgusting is pushing them toward adoption just to get your hands on that trust. And now you are furious that the plan backfired. Do not call me again, except through a lawyer. I hung up before she had time to respond. 2 days later, I understood how far they were willing to go. My neighbor, Mrs. Caldwell, intercepted me in the driveway. She is the kind of person who notices everything. Nathan, she told me, yesterday there were people taking photos of your house. Not delivery guys. Notebooks, notes, looking official. I thanked her and tried to brush it off, but deep down I knew. Something was brewing. That afternoon, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, a social worker and a police officer stood on my porch. Mr. Alvarez? Asked the social worker. We received a complaint regarding the mistreatment of minors and financial neglect. May we come in? My heart pounded, but my expression remained calm. Sure. They entered, looking around as if checking the house for traps. The social worker pulled out a file. The complaint alleges that you refused basic financial support to the minors for years, causing psychological harm. There are signed statements from the boys. She placed the file on my table and slid it toward me. I opened it. Caleb's neat handwriting, Mason's messier handwriting. Affidavits stating that I had kept them in an unsafe environment, that I denied them clothes, that I deprived them financially out of cruelty. The officer frowned. These are serious accusations, Mr. Alvarez. If proven, we are talking about criminal charges. Give me a few minutes, I said, heading upstairs. I came back down with a box I had kept for years. Every bank statement, every tuition receipt, every medical bill carefully filed. I spread them on the table. Here, I said. Private school tuition paid every semester. Health insurance premiums, up to date. Food, clothes, extracurricular activities. 15 years of documented proof. The social worker flipped through the files for a good half hour. Her expression changed from suspicion to disbelief. This clearly shows you provided far more than the bare minimum. The officer looked at me. Do you have any idea why your sons would sign affidavits like this? He asked. Yes, I answered calmly. Because their parents convinced them to. This is all about money, about a college trust they no longer have access to. Derek tried to demand access, and when that failed, they filed a complaint. I even have proof. I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Derek's voice filled the room. My lawyer says as guardian, I have the right to manage the trust. Then his frustration when I told him I did not know the details. The officer's eyebrows went up. That is highly irregular. The social worker closed the file. We will have to investigate further, but from an outside perspective, it seems someone is abusing the system to gain financial leverage. They left 2 hours later, but not before the officer gave me a warning. If this moves forward, they will likely request a restraining order and attempt to freeze your assets. Get your papers in order. That night, I stayed in my office, the screen's glow lighting the room. They were not just trying to take my money. They were trying to put me in legal trouble. False accusations, legal maneuvers, all just to recover money that did not belong to them anymore. Fine. If that is the game they wanted, I would go further. The next morning, I made 2 calls. One to Caleb's future college, one to Mason's. Hello, I said to the financial aid office. I need to officially withdraw my declaration of financial support and my guarantee as co-signer for my son's student loans. The woman on the phone sounded surprised. Is there a problem, sir? They are no longer legally my sons, I said with a steady voice. They were adopted by another man. He is the one responsible for their education costs now. Furthermore, they recently filed a complaint accusing me of serious misconduct and neglect. Please note this. A long silence. Understood, sir. This will trigger an immediate review of their enrollment file. Without verified financial support, their guardian will be responsible. Perfect, I replied. Send him the bill. That afternoon, I leaned back in my chair, staring at the clock. My house was spotless, my documents flawless, and my finger was on the trigger. They wanted a war for money. They were going to learn what it feels like to lose everything you relied on. The matches were not just ready. The first flame was lit. When the night of the farewell dinner finally arrived, my house no longer looked like mine. The living room had been emptied, folding chairs lined up in neat rows. The projector pointed at the wall. The air smelled of catered food, nothing fancy, but enough to impress those who believed I only knew how to light a rusty old barbecue. I wore my new suit, my cufflinks sparkled, and I felt sharper than I had been in years. Vanessa arrived by my side, dressed simply but elegantly, and when she took my arm, I knew that walking into this evening, I was a man they would no longer recognize. The doorbell rang. One by one, they entered. My ex-wife, as always in a sequin dress, Derek already sweating around the collar. And behind them, Caleb and Mason, uncomfortable, looking as if they were not sure if they had fallen into a trap. Wow, said my ex-wife, glancing around. You really made an effort. I will give you that. I smiled. Sit wherever you want. We are starting soon. They were not the only ones. Ronald arrived and shook my hand firmly, his eyes fixed on Derek like a predator waiting for his moment. A few of Derek's creditors slipped inside discreetly, their faces tense with anticipation. I even heard one whisper, "Can't wait to see him melt." Perfect. Food was served first, just to maintain the illusion. Conversations buzzed, but most kept glancing toward me. They were waiting for the reason I had gathered them all in this house. Then, right on cue, My ex-wife raised her glass. To family, she announced with a victorious smile. To new beginnings, and to Derek, who knew how to step up where others failed. Polite applause. Caleb snickered. Mason nodded. Derek puffed out his chest, savoring the flattery. I let the applause die down, then stood up. Thanks for that, I said calmly. But I think it is time to clear up a few points. Since everyone is here to celebrate, let us ensure we know exactly what we are celebrating. The room went instantly silent. I grabbed the projector remote, and the first slide appeared. A table of my overtime hours. Line after line, years of late nights and double shifts. For 15 years, I worked 2 jobs. Every penny possible, I invested in Caleb and Mason's education. Tuition fees, medical care, food, clothes, everything is documented. Some here called me cheap. Some thought I was not doing enough. So, let us put the numbers in the light. The next slide showed my savings account, the $447,000 I had set aside in 15 years. Murmurs of shock went through the room. And that was just me. What you did not know is that their grandfather had also created a college trust. $2 million locked for their future until the adoption. Click. The next slide displayed the adoption decree next to the trust clause. The important passages were highlighted. If the beneficiaries cease to be legal heirs, the funds revert to the biological father. So, I continued, when Caleb and Mason walked into that court and chose adoption, I paused. They did not just leave me. They gave this up. Murmurs filled the room. My ex-wife jumped up, red with rage. You stole their money. I turned to her. No, you took my sons from me, and the money legally returned to me. At that, Derek intervened. That is not how it works. I am their guardian now. The trust. It is funny you say that. I cut him off. Because I recorded you demanding access from me. Here is the problem, Derek. You cannot manage something that does not exist for them anymore. I pressed play. His voice echoed in the room. My lawyer says as guardian, I have the right to manage the trust. Then his frustration when he learned there was nothing. Absolute silence. Click. Next slide. The debts. For $100,000 to private lenders. A business bankrupt for 6 months. Here, I said, pointing to the numbers. The man my sons traded me for. They believed he would offer them audits, trips, a better life. Reality, he is drowning in debt. These cars. Click. A freeze frame of the WhatsApp video of the boys posing proudly in front of the red convertible. Dealer plate. Not his, never was. Mason gasped. Caleb looked like he wanted to disappear. Then Ronald stood up. You also owe me $60,000, you liar, he yelled, throwing a folder on the table. You promised to pay me back. Instead, you took advantage of me like everyone else. Derek stammered, attempting to stand up, but his creditors had already moved closer, encircling him. I was not finished. But the debts are not even the worst part, I said coldly. Click. The final slide appeared. The insurance fraud documents. Signatures included. 5 years ago, Derek faked an incident at work. My ex-wife helped him falsify the medical records. Ronald kept the proof. So when you hear about the serious charges they filed against me, understand who filed them. A con man and his accomplice. The murmurs turned into shouts. Phones came out. People took photos of the screen. My ex-wife's face crumbled, tears mingling with anger. Caleb whispered, we did not know. But no one listened to him. The entire room had turned against them. I set down the remote. You freed me from my role as father in court. Tonight, I free you from my wallet. That is all I have to say. I turned, offered my arm to Vanessa, and together we walked toward the door. Behind me, chaos erupted. Ronald was yelling. The creditors were demanding answers. My ex-wife was stammering lies. Derek tried to move, but got cornered. And Caleb and Mason. They sat frozen, watching the empire they thought they had joined collapse around them. Outside, the night was cool, calm, almost peaceful. For the first time in a long time, I felt the weight slip off my shoulders. The fire was burning, and I did not need to stay to watch them burn down. The following week, the fallout had already begun. Derek's creditors did not wait. They sued him and froze what little he had left. Within a few weeks, prosecutors filed charges. A few months later, he accepted a plea deal, 2 years in prison for insurance fraud. Ronald had handed over the documents. The prosecutors had pounced, and Derek ended up with hard time. My ex-wife, cornered, negotiated a deal. She testified against him in exchange for probation. But the damage was done. She came out of there with a criminal record that made her unemployable in any serious field. Her social circle collapsed too. The same people to whom she had paraded her upgrade now avoided her like the plague. As for Caleb and Mason, reality does not care about teenage arrogance. Without the trust fund, and without me as a co-signer, Caleb's college registration was canceled before the semester even started. Mason's early admission spot vanished too once the financial support was withdrawn. When I pulled my support and the adoption papers were processed, admissions flagged their files. Without proven support, everything was suspended, and that flag followed them. Other universities did not want them either. The famous future Derek had promised them evaporated overnight. So they worked. Caleb ended up stocking shelves on the night shift at a supermarket. Mason waited tables at a restaurant chain in the same place where he used to go for fun. They took a tiny apartment, 1 bedroom, sharing rent and bills. No car, no vacations, no designer clothes. Just paychecks that vanished as soon as they arrived. Months passed before I saw them again. One Saturday morning, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, they were there. Thinner, exhausted, far from the insolent assurance they displayed at court. They no longer had the arrogance, only fatigue and something else in their eyes. Respect, maybe even fear. "Hi, Dad," said Caleb. His voice trembled. I did not move. "What are you doing here?" Mason swallowed hard. "We wanted to talk if you have time." Against my better judgment, I let them in. They sat at the table where months earlier I had shown my files to the social worker. Except this time, they were the ones who brought theirs. Pay stubs, budget notebooks, notes on how they had survived. "For 8 months, we have been working and thinking," said Mason. "About what we did, about what you did for us." Caleb's voice cracked. "We called you cheap when you worked 2 jobs to give us everything. Now, we know what it feels like to wake up at 5 and still not have enough. We understand." They did not beg, they did not cry. They just laid out their numbers, their plans. Then Caleb said, "We are not asking for gifts. We are asking for a loan with interest. We want to earn back the right to be your sons." I did not say yes immediately. I told them I would think about it. A week later, I sent them a contract drafted by Grant, a formal school funding agreement. The conditions were strict: 3% interest, a minimum GPA of 3.5, at least 20 hours of work per week, monthly expense reports, and a weekly video call. It was no longer fatherly support. It was business. They signed without even reading the fine print. Meanwhile, I did not stay still. I invested the trust money smartly. In less than a year, thanks to a strong market and a small real estate deal I had financed, it had grown by another $800,000. I traveled. I lived. I finally did things for myself. The first video call with Mason was surreal. He showed me his grades. Straight as. His budget was tight. Every dollar counted. "Thank you for giving us a second chance," he said. "You are in the process of earning it," I replied. And I meant it. It was no longer the father-son relationship we had before. It was different, better in a way. No more illusions. No more unearned expectations. Respect where there was once resentment. My ex-wife did not take it as well. She sent messages for months, mostly blaming me for ruining their lives. The last one simply read, "I hate you." After that, I changed my number. Sometimes, I wondered if I went too far, if I had been too hard. But then, I remembered Mason's words during the chaos of the dinner. "Derek promised us college, cars, trips. He said you were cheap by choice." That was not a mistake. It was a decision, and they had to live with it. For 15 years, I carried the weight of being their father. Now, I carried nothing. The money was safe. My life was mine. And for the first time in almost 20 years, I finally understood what freedom feels like. Comment. Watching someone walk away from toxic relationships is never easy, but sometimes it is the most necessary step for our well-being. Real self-worth comes from knowing your value is not defined by how others treat you, even if they are family. Setting firm boundaries is not about being cruel. It is about protecting your peace and teaching others how to respect you. True growth often happens when we are allowed to face the consequences of our choices, just as we saw in this journey toward accountability. Forgiveness does not always mean returning to the way things were, but it can open the door to a healthier, more honest future. No matter how much you have sacrificed, Remember, it is never too late to reclaim your life and find happiness on your own terms. Real loyalty is built on shared struggles and genuine love, not on material promises or shallow appearances. I hope this reminds you that you have the strength to walk away from places where you are not valued. Prioritize your peace today because you truly deserve a life filled with respect and freedom. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.